All right, you're good.
All right. Well, I am Justin McAdam. I'm the chair of the Distressed Unit Appeal Board. I will call this meeting to order and note that we have posted the agenda and the notice of this meeting in accordance with the open door law. Before we get started, Courtney, do you want to make your introductory comments around WebEx?
Sure. All right. So yes, just some intro comments for everybody who is on the line. DUAB members and those who are up as panelists, you all have the ability to mute and unmute your lines as we go. Please, if you're not speaking, please go ahead and have your line on mute just so we don't get any feedback. Attendees, you are all on mute. And then the other thing just to be aware of is that from an attendee's perspective, you won't be able to see the list of other folks who are on the line. So for you, it may look like you're the only person here. Please know that that's not true. We do have a number of attendees on the line already. If you do encounter any issues during the meeting, I would ask that you please send me a message through the chat option that is available within WebEx. And then lastly, this meeting is being recorded and we will make it available through our DUAB webpage /YouTube channel as soon as we have the recording finalized.
Great, thank you. Also, one thing we note as we're still acclimating to this new process, we will take public comment again today. Please send Courtney a message if you wish to participate in that public comment. We do have a few people signed up already. We will vote on our minutes before we come back to the public comment, so there are just a couple minutes if you want to get in the queue there. Our first item of business we will turn to is the approval of our minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve today. We have the September 17th, 2020 public meeting minutes, the September 25th public meeting minutes, and the September 25th executive session minutes. Everyone's had a chance to review those. Are there any changes or corrections that need to be made to the minutes? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we would approve the minutes as described.
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to get your attention.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Those last 2 sets of minutes, I was in the meeting. I sent Courtney a text indicating that you could not hear me, could not recognize me. I wasn't on WebEx, but I was on a hearing. All of you. But Courtney said for the second session that she would let you know, and I waited for that, and you still couldn't hear me.
Yeah, sorry for that technical difficulty. I believe, Courtney, you sent out a revised set of minutes yesterday. Are those reflective of Representative Smith's request?
Yes, that is correct. Both of the minutes for the September 25th meetings, they both reflect his attendance to those meetings.
Okay, great. Is there a second? We have a motion. Nobody wants to approve the minutes today?
Okay, I was looking at the minutes and I was trying to get the picture back for this screen, but yeah, I will second it.
All right, I appreciate it. If we can't approve the minutes, the budget's going to be difficult today. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Courtney, would you call the roll?
Yes. Paul Joyce?
Yes.
Wes Bennett? Rebecca Kubacki? Rebecca, you there? Here, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you for a second, okay? Rebecca?
Yes, my computer is frozen for some reason.
Oh, okay. All right.
I can't make it. So you might have to unmute me when we do a call.
Okay. Yeah, I will make sure to do that. All right. Okay. But your vote for the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. And then Justin McAdam?
Yes.
All right. 4-0.
All right. Just barely made it today. Okay. Next.
Sorry. I just want you to know that Kim is also frozen. She's trying to log back in, Ms. Shaftsma, if you see her. So she's having problems as well. So if you could see if she's trying to log back in, please.
Okay. Yeah, I will keep watch on that. I will say periodically WebEx will freeze. My experience is if you just wait it out for a couple of minutes, it does eventually kick back in. But certainly I understand the difficulties.
Okay, thank you.
To our public comment, as a reminder, each person will have 3 minutes to provide comments, and Courtney will provide a timer so that we can keep track of that time. And we would ask that everyone please keep their comments within those 3 minutes to allow everyone to have an opportunity to make comments before the board today. Courtney will unmute your line to allow you to participate, and she will call your name when it is time. And she will remute the microphone at the end of your time after you've concluded your comments. If you are unable to provide comments today or don't wish to provide them directly to the board in person, you can also email comments to us at duab@duab.in.gov, or you can provide them by voicemail at 317-234-2273, and those comments in both forms will be circulated to all board members. Courtney, you want to kick us off?
Yes, give me 1 second here to adjust to the timer.
Okay.
Okay. All right. The first individual I have for public comment is Dr. Michaela Spangenberg. Let me find you here and unmute you. Dr. Spangenberg?
You holding me?
Yes, we are now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for holding public comment. We do appreciate it. I wanted to address real quick some of the issues that have caused residents in Gary to be very reluctant to endorse this referendum or to vote for this referendum. And the huge one, of course, being lack of financial transparency and lack of clarity in what transparency is provided. I took a brief look at the annual, what I believe has been distributed as an annual report from 2019 of some expenditures. And there seems to be, an unspecified vendor to whom has been paid $1 million. There seems to be other issues that don't make sense, why there's still plumbing issues after Slayer was paid more than $500,000, why Diane Schweitzer is getting paid $118,000. There's issues like that. But even so, recently what we've begun to undertake at the Gary Education Coalition is even looking at the information that's commonly available to residents and to parents, like on InView and things like that, and comparing those financials, because even glancing at that data, that something doesn't feel right. And indeed, we've done what is like a preliminary statistical analysis of even just the very bare bones information that residents have on that portal. And there's definitely numbers that are awry, particularly as we found so far, academic spending is so low as to be within statistical significance. And that to me is quite troubling. You see other areas where there's elevations in spending that shouldn't be there, namely the operational costs of the school corporation as a whole. And so this makes me wonder, like many of our residents wonder, if we're already seeing these warning signs from last year, why should we hand them a blank check for the coming years? especially when so much of their willingness to pursue this seemed based in y'all deciding that you didn't want to give them a raise on their executive pay through their contract directly with you, because all these years ago when they first came into this, they set all these things in motion regarding the referendum, but didn't pull the trigger until just now. And I think that's significant. Thank you.
All right. Here. All right, next we have Tracy Coleman. I believe this is you. Tracy, is this you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
right.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here as a parent. Last meeting for DUAB, I discussed that my child did not have books for all of his classes. This meeting, we're down to one book that's still needed. And this is where I'm concerned, because DUAB assured the community that academics was going to be a focus. And what I'm seeing is that the academics is still in the back burner, and it's the finances that's of most concern for DUAB and the emergency manager and the for-profit companies. And it shows because now we have a chief academic officer who is also over Title I funds. Each of those responsibilities is a job in itself. So to give a community that we're pushing academics for our children to have a crucial position tied in with so many different functions does not show respect for our community. And also with Title I, if we look last year, there was over $5 million rolled over to this budget year. That is a concern, because if Title I funds are not being spent appropriately, then we know that the operations fund is going to have stress that it does not have to have. And then when we look at the budget, there are concerns. When you look at the textbook rental fund, there's $6,370,000 in that fund, but yet my child does not have a book. Self-insurance, over $3 million. U.S. Steel, $4 million. Then you look at Title I rolled over, $5 million. Those type of numbers deserve accountability, and DUAB needs to hold these for-profit companies responsible to say, is there a way to balance the budget looking at the numbers that we have? Why is $6 million sitting in this fund? Why is $3 million? And the fact is, as a community, Indiana citizen, I don't have a school board to go to, which I would love to have. Because the fact is, even when the board met in September, that meeting was cut off. In a democracy where there will be debates, there will be disagreements, but the fact that the Indiana citizens who live in Gary have to get this different type of law is unfair, and it's unacceptable. And then also I am definitely concerned that when we look at the budget, we understand that there is a lot of CARES Act funding out there. Our president of the PTSA has consistently asked for meetings with the governor and also asked for DUAB to try to get a portion of that over $1 billion that is left to address the building issues in the Gary Community School Corporation that can be directly tied to COVID funding. So if we know that heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, that could spread COVID if it's not addressed properly, bad roofing, the plumbing, there are districts or different governmental entities that are able to get sinks that you don't have to touch. Our kids in Gary deserve that, but eventually we have to have people who are so compassionate, who feel such a sense of urgency, that understand that this window of time, that Gary needs to get every dollar that it can. But the reality in Gary, we have our leaders pushing us for a referendum. And I would just end with that the PTSA, our task force, we're pushing freedom. Forgive the debt, restore local control, engage the community, employ a superintendent, designate funding to make Roosevelt a museum for the state to preserve history for everybody. I have two more, I'm sorry. Operate on the operating fund to balance it and make monies available through COVID, the CARES Act, to fix our buildings. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
All right. Lastly, for public comment, I have Jessica Samuels. Ms. Samuels?
Yes.
Good morning. We can hear you.
Oh, great. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I appreciate the job that DUAB is doing. I appreciate the job that MGT is doing. However, I guess I'm a little amiss about why there's such pushback on this referendum, because people need to understand that these are the things that are required in order to move forward with the school system. Not taking anything away from those people that have a different opinion, but I think that we all need to understand that if these things aren't addressed now, if this referendum is not passed now, then we are in a world of trouble. And the students are in a world of trouble. And I guess even locally, listening to some of the comments on different radio shows, how previous board members always talk about what happened yesterday and then yesteryear. This is 2021. We are 2020, moving into 2021. We need to move forward. And moving forward would be a situation where that referendum would be passed to benefit the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samuels.
Thank you. All right. I believe that is the last individual I had signed up for public comment.
All right. Great. Thank you, Courtney. Our next item of business today is an update from the Executive Director on the budget advertisement. Courtney, would you introduce this item?
Yes, give me 1 second. I'm trying to get everything settled back into this.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. All right. So yes, in your board packet for today, I do have a budget advertisement approval. Per the DUAB statute, DUAB is required to approve the proposed budgets, levies, and tax rates both before they are advertised and adopted. So in the case of the budget advertisement back in 2018, DUAB delegated that authority to me to authorize that advertisement so that the process can continue. And then obviously later on our agenda for today, we have the actual approval of, or consideration of the approval of the budget itself. So in your packet, I just have provided to you a document that indicates that on September 18th, I did receive from Nicole Wolverton, the CFO for Geary Schools. I received a copy of the budget advertisement, did review that and provided approval for them to go ahead and do that budget posting. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Any questions? All right. Courtney, thank you very much. And as Courtney said, we will come back to the budget discussion later. So as we have questions specific to the substance of the budget proposed by Gary, we can touch on it then. Our next item of business is an update from the manager of Geary Community Schools. We have Dr. McNulty with us today. Dr. McNulty. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm excited to present and talk about some of the things that are happening within the Geary Community Schools. We have lots to share and some exciting things to share. So I want to start kind of midway through my list, and I want to start by saying we have formed our advisory meetings of committees that we had talked about. We also have started our training for our SRO officers. So we did send several of them through training to become the trainer of trainers, if you will, for de-escalation skills, CPI, and those types of skill sets. And so they have come back and they are now training our set of 30-some employees to become skilled in those areas so that we can continue on with our character education and PBIS training throughout the district.
Dr. McNulty, I know what an SRO officer is, but I wonder if you might.
I'm sorry, school resource officer. School resource officer.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm used to school acronyms. I got to stop them.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay. Also, we have formed our school advisory committees at each building, which I'm very excited about. And the purpose of this is to get feedback and ownership and from stakeholders within the school. So the purpose is that we would have teachers, a cross mix of people, such as teachers, social workers, custodial, all facets that would be represented at this committee meeting, parents, et cetera, so they could talk with us about what needs to happen within that building, have feedback on Title I funding, behavior management things within the building, and so that everybody's working in the same direction towards common goals and that people have input onto how to make those goals achievable. So all those have been formed within each building. It's also a way for people to voice opinions, concerns within the building. It stays at the lower level and grow those buildings individually. We've also done that with our food service, curriculum, and technology. So those are up and running, and all those meetings are happening as we speak throughout this month, and they will continue to happen throughout the school year. Additionally, the schools in the state have also been approved again for the summer feeding program waiver. So instead of just feeding just our school students, it's open to all school students and their families. So we are back to feeding about 7,000 people a week. We are feeding students, they get meals for every day of the week, but our distribution days are Monday and Wednesdays, and we're continuing to do that through our buses. We take them out to about 20-some bus sites throughout the community and frequently have long lines of people waiting to get food on Mondays and Wednesdays. So we're happy to say that we're able to feed over 7,000 people every week at this time, and that's been a huge endeavor, and I'm very proud of our staff for being able to continue those efforts. We're also continuing to work with the Gary Health Department. We have been meeting with them frequently, and one of the things that they've asked us to partner with them on is immunizations. They've seen a sharp decline in immunizations across the board because of COVID, and so they've asked us to help with them to get our students and anybody in the community their required immunization. So we are working with them to open up our schools so that students can come there as a site, perhaps in the lobby with personnel from the health department to try to get those immunizations done. And so we're going to be working with our own personnel and nurses to try to get that done and to do some outreach through our FACE liaisons. Our positivity rate, just like across the state, has gone up. So we were put in the orange zone yesterday. We're at about a 12.2 positivity rate. So we are, again, working with our local health departments on precautions for that. I'm excited to say, as you know, we deployed about 4,500 iPads, Chromebooks, over the summer with hotspots. And then this week, we also added little tech devices for our preschoolers. And I'm really excited about that. The Chromebooks were difficult, or are difficult for the little ones to navigate and to use. So we got kind of like little leapfrog devices for the little guys, because we understand that the babies need to have some applications that are prudent to school learning and to get them prepared for kindergarten. So we were able to get all those ready to go and deployed out. So we're excited to be able to offer that to our preschoolers. I also want to talk about our enrollment. We are really excited to say that we have had, for the first time, I think 12 years, and Mr. Parrish can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about 12 years that our enrollment has gone up at the Gary Community Schools, and I'm really excited about that. And that is an effort that has been undertaken by the staff, and I'm very proud of them. We continue to review our numbers because, again, just like many states across, many school districts across the state, there's kids that are missing due to COVID. They've decided to stay home and they haven't enrolled anywhere. According to the DOE this week, the state is down between 12,000 and 14,000 kids. We certainly understand that those students, they're still doing their unofficial number for final conflicts, and that will be solidified, I believe, the 23rd. But our official number at this point is 4,400, which is up, again, for the first time in about 12 years. So I think that's a huge celebration in the middle of COVID, that we didn't lose kids, and we've actually gone up. So I want to make sure that we all celebrate and congratulate the staff and the parents for supporting our school district and the students.
Yeah, Dr. McNulty, I want to stop you right there, because that really is a phenomenal accomplishment. It's something we've been working towards since the beginning of this engagement, and since the beginning of DUAB and MGT's involvement here. We all know that one of the keys to righting the ship and creating stability in Gary Community Schools is stabilizing the enrollment and ideally growing that enrollment and being competitive and bringing those kids back to the Gary Community Schools from the other opportunities that are also there in Gary. And so just want to commend you all on that effort, especially in these difficult times. I know that you're in a minority of schools that have been able to actually grow enrollment during this time. So thank you for that effort.
Well, I thank the staff because they've just done, and the teachers have done a phenomenal job of reaching out to students who might not at the very beginning of the school year have been consistently logging on. And so we have really worked hard with the teachers and the administration to make sure that they are reaching out to those kids. We've done home visits. We've done lots of parent contacts, and that's working. And so I applaud the staff for their efforts and for getting kids engaged in school.
Absolutely.
I also want to talk about our health insurance this year. As you know, we joined the trust last year, I think, which is a very, very positive thing for our district. The trust is continuing to grow. We do have another large district that's looking to join us here in the near future, which will be a tremendous asset to our trust growth. Our trust insurance is going up 5% this year, which when you look, I think statistically across the state, that's not bad. They did bring to us numbers of 5%, 6%, or 7% increase, and the board voted to adopt the 5% increase, obviously, with our budgets this year. But the trust does enable all of our employees who are signed up for insurance to utilize clinics throughout the district as far as Porter County and Lake County. There's 6 clinics, and they can get all their labs, x-rays, medication filled for free for themselves and their family, and wellness visits, and also screening for diabetes. They also have weight loss clinics, and they have smoking cessation, that type of stuff. So I think it's a huge benefit to our district. We're looking to increase the clinics. We're hoping to have one in Gary shortly that would be a telemedicine type situation for our staff so they could go there before or after school or on their lunch. But again, I think that's been a huge bonus for our school district, and I'm happy to report that it's going very well. Lastly, I'd like to say I want to thank the community for their support for our school district. We have just had an outpouring of people calling and writing and even just showing up at our door asking how they can volunteer and help with our school. And I'm really proud to say that we've had tons of volunteers, past alumni that have been calling, churches, etc., who've really come together in the midst of a hard time right now to say, how can we help and how can we partner with the school district? And that has been a wonderful thing. So I want to thank everybody for partnering with the schools, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. And I have to say that I feel like, since I've been there anyhow, for the first time, all of our oars are pulling in the same direction. So we don't have someone going in a circle and we're trying to get it all straightened out. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. I truly believe that the administration knows that the direction that we're moving towards. I think the teachers know the direction that we're moving towards. And again, everybody's pulling towards that same common goal, which is student growth. So I think that things are going really well.
Well, Dr. McNulty, thank you for that update. It's encouraging to hear your enthusiasm and your optimism about the district. I think certainly the enrollment shift is paying off, and I think the other forces that are moving in a positive direction are encouraging as well.
Thank you.
Are there questions for Dr. McNulty today? Yes, Representative.
Yes, Dr. McNulty, good morning.
Good morning.
You talked about the de-escalation training, and I commend you for doing that. Has the lines of authority been drawn? Because in the previous year at one of our high schools, what happened was that the principal had made a determination of how the students should be punished. But the officer, who was a sworn officer of the city, decided that he was going to arrest the student and take the student down to jail. are those lines drawn? And the administrator was very upset with this because the officer just took over. Has that been addressed, or is it anything that you've given any attention to?
Yes, I agree with you. I do believe that. I do know that was happening. We've had lots of conversations relative to the types of situations. And yes, we have had to have several meetings, and I've been involved in several of those meetings with the officers, both security and SRO officers combined, to let them know that they work for us during the school day. They're not working out on the streets. And so how you handle somebody out in the streets might be different than, or it should be different than how you handle a student within a school situation, and that they need to take the lead from the administration. There definitely needs to be some separation, but the administrator is the final say-so on how that situation is handled. And so hence what needed for the de-escalation training and how you handle kids differently within a school team for sure. So I definitely think that is improving. We have implemented the MTSS, which is the multi-tiered levels of support, Mr. McAdam, for how to handle students as far as behavior management. And those are included on that advisory board, and we hope to have officers on that advisory council as well so they can continue to sharpen their skills.
Dealing with the e-learning, is art, music, and PE being offered in the Gary Community School Corporation?
Yes.
Okay. How is this being done with e-learning?
So students are given things that they have to do. For example, for PE, they have to do calisthenics. And I know, for example, I was talking to Dr. Veronica Williams, one of our PE teachers, the other day. And so she has students log on with her, and she does aerobics with some of the girls. So she's got a girls class. She does calisthenics with the boys. And so she's got a class actually that we can log on to anytime in real time and watch the students participating. She's got them up and moving. And that's the same, for example, at all the other schools. Art, the students, we sent home some kits with the younger kids, and the older kids are using things and teaching artists and using some things that they have at home.
Okay, how do students submit that? They just show it to the teacher through the camera?
Yeah.
Or is there a day that they're supposed to return them to the school corporation?
They can show it to the teacher through the camera. We have people that can pick it up. Our face liaisons have gone around and picked up things if they need to. So they make frequent drives around. Also, parents have brought things back to food service sites, because again, there's 20 some of them, so sometimes they bring it there and we pick it up and bring it back to the school from there as well.
I had the opportunity to attend a school board meeting for a different corporation, a neighboring corporation, school corporation, this past Tuesday, and parents were there complaining about the attention span for the students, the fact that they're required to sit there in inordinate periods of time. How many breaks are given to our students in a given day?
I'm not sure how many breaks they're given, Mr. Smith, but I can find out and get back to you.
Okay.
I can
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, are you still here?
Feedback. If you're not speaking, if you could mute the microphone, that may help with the feedback.
That we incorporated several breaks into the schedule that we created for K to 5 and also 6 to 8. So we worked with the teachers and the principals when the schedules were created, so that there were lots of breaks, especially for the little ones, because they, of course, as you know, aren't able to sit that long. And then we have activities like brain breaks throughout the lessons as well.
Why do we not have the textbooks in? Because that was one of the things that MGT was lauding themselves about, that they had provided all the textbook. Why do we have a parent that's still saying that they don't have a textbook, and we're months into the school year?
We do have the textbooks in, so I'm not familiar with that individual situation, but I certainly will look into it. But we do have the textbooks in.
Well,
also, Dr. Smith, all the textbooks are also online as well.
Okay, well, I'm sure you're familiar with Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, and if you could follow up on that, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
I'd like to get to your report, and for some reason, I only had page numbers on 2 pages, and I didn't see page numbers thereafter. But on page 2 of your report, the top comment you have here is that your enrollment numbers. You talk about it. You give 4,400 somewhere else, and here you got 4,000. I'm not 4,400. Yeah, 4,400. 4,400, and here you have 4,512. What is the actual enrollment?
4,400.
So why do we have this figure?
4512, I think, was when I first submitted my report several weeks ago, and then we've done another conflict scrub of the numbers, and it went down to 4,400, but that's the final number.
Okay.
I resubmitted my report, so if it didn't get corrected, I apologize.
Okay. If you drop down to the second to the last bullet, is this person 7,000 persons or 7,000 meals that you said you were feeding over? I get the impression that it's persons. And so if we only have 4,400 students, why are we feeding 7,000?
Because under the summer feeding program, we are enabled to feed anybody that comes to our sites. So if you've got little kids who aren't yet in school or family members, we are allowed to feed them.
Okay, that was just summer though, right?
Right, but the state has expanded that program right now and has expanded that waiver, so it's still under effect.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Dr. McNulty, if I could jump in,
Sure.
Representative Smith, real quick. Dr. McNulty, does that extend then to, is that just persons who have a student in the Gary Community Schools, or is that anybody in Gary Community who has a student?
Anybody in Gary.
So students attending charter schools, districts,
Correct.
they can all come get a meal at Gary Community.
That's correct.
Does that apply to adults as well?
You have to be 18 years or younger.
Younger, okay. On the next page, and I'm calling it page 3, one of the bullets says, does Gary Community School Corporation still use corporal punishment? I know that we do not any longer. Has that impacted the suspension and the expulsion rates since MGT took over and outruled corporal punishment?
Again, I can't answer that right now, but I can look at the data and report back to you at our next meeting or call you later this week, Dr. Smith. But I know that suspensions and expulsions is something that I'm definitely targeting this school year.
Okay.
But I have to go back and look in history over the last year or two and get that answer for you.
As I indicated, I didn't see pages on on the report that I printed out, but it's the 11th page where it has the Bailey STEM Academy sign.
Representative Smith, I believe that's going to be in the School Improvement Fund Plan update, which I'm not sure we've gotten to just yet. I think that will be coming up in a minute or two.
Okay, then I'll hold my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Are there other questions for Dr. McNulty? All right. Well, hearing none, we do have Eric Parrish with us here today to give us an update on the School Improvement Fund plan. Mr. Parrish.
Good morning, everyone. The School Improvement Fund update usually is given by Rob Tanner. He couldn't be here today, so I'm filling in for him. The report is fairly brief. In your packet is the monthly update. And just as a reminder, as you scroll through that report that comes monthly, as a reminder, the red typeface is new data for the current month. And then the blue and the black is the updates from prior months. So it'll be a living document, and you'll see the sequence of events as we go forward. So the red typeface for what would have been September update is essentially based on DUAB's actions last meeting, approving the contract with the architecture and engineering firm. That is now in place, signed, and that firm is working on the plans for the boilers and the roofs. And that's the first step in that process. So everything's going to plan for that. The other piece that did happen, and a little more tangible, something that you could see, and there's a YouTube video link included in the report, the painting at Gary Middle School as well as the Gary Area Career Center. It's really nice if you have a chance to check out that YouTube video. And the last piece of red, I skipped over some things and sort of will circle back and answer your questions. Playground at Beveridge, that work has started, at least the site preparation. More to putting in a playground than I ever imagined. After the narrative part of the report are some financial documents. I'll walk you through that very, very briefly. There's not a lot to report. We'll see on the control document that there was painting taking place, and we've posted what that amount was for the month. That's the primary activity in September. The one thing I really want to draw your attention to is the receipts. It's just a quick, simple snapshot by month, how we were receiving the 1065 School Improvement Fund revenue. We started out with $550,000 for July and August, and then you'll see September, $264,425. That's a true up. The 550 were placeholders until we got the exact amounts that we would be receiving in. And so now that we have that, September was a true up, and you'll see the exact amount going forward. I wanted to bring that to your attention in case there's any confusion. And then the last pages are just straight out of the accounting ledger to show DUAB, what actually was expended and for what purposes. And we'll see these documents, the control document and the claims docket, every month going forward for whatever activity took place in the prior month. Dr. Smith, Justin, I'll turn it over to you for questions. I know Dr. Smith had one, but we'll turn it to you, Justin.
Yeah, well, Dr. Smith, if you want to go ahead with your question for Eric.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Parrish. On page 11, the page that has the Bailey STEM Academy sign connected with this fund, it says an ADA improvement elevator maintenance in all schools. What schools open have elevators?
That I don't know if but that would be a perfect question for Mr. Tanner, who couldn't be with us today, but we'll find out and get you the answer.
And then I saw a chairlift at Beveridge School. When you say a chairlift, is that for handicapped or what is that for?
That would be my assumption, but I don't, again, your question, I apologize if you had it today.
Yes, Mr. Parrish, I can help you with that. That's a chairlift for students with special needs at that school, and it could also be for a staff member who might need it, so for fire evacuation needs.
Okay, and it says the water fountain heights. But did you change the water fountains or what?
The water fountain heights needed to be lowered because it was too high. If that school was made for a different level of students at one point, you have to lower them for students.
That's just at Beveridge or where?
Just at Beveridge.
Okay. On page 14, and I hope I'm still within your area, you have architectural services for this fund. To whom and what for? Because I thought basically this was just making improvements, and basically you're doing painting tracks and field and stadiums and so forth. why are we spending over $500,000 for architectural plans? And with whom did we contract?
Yeah. So last month, we started going reverse order. Last month, DUAB approved the contract with Martin Riley Architects and Engineers. That was a procurement through an RFP process, and that firm was most responsive and the best value for Gary Community Schools. So that contract was executed after the DUAB meeting last month. And that's a question I had as well. I have in my head that architects draw blueprints for building new buildings. I've been educated that architects and engineers, and probably more of an emphasis on engineers for us, is not just drawing blueprints. They are on project management and also designing and making sure the work that is done on boilers, chillers, and roofs, the major project work, so not painting, not light general maintenance, but the major work that has to be done that requires permitting and oversight and to specifications, the engineers from that firm will be doing that oversight monitoring as well as the design work to make sure all of those major projects are done correctly.
Year?
I'm sorry?
Is this for this 600,000? Is that for one calendar year, one academic year? What is that, a one-time fee for the whole process for ensuing years, or what? 600,000 just sounds like a whole lot of money.
It does sound like a lot of money. It is a contract that has a maximum amount and not to exceed amount. It could be significantly less than the not to exceed amount. It'll depend on the actual work and the scope of that work. So the contract, the service contract was drawn to be one, and then there'll be invoices submitted based on work that we approve in advance.
But what period of time do you expect this money to cover?
Yeah, this will be for all of the major projects. So the extent of the school improvement.
That's the entire time for the bill?
For the 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah. Now, put one extra add to that is we've seen in anybody who's been around construction projects, this is best information we have today, that as we get into especially roofs and boilers that require significant upgrades, it's one of those, this is based on what we know today.
Page 15, you've got the monies that have been received, or the monies, I guess. I don't know if you send the money to the state and they send them back to you, how this is working. But why is the figure for September so much lower than the previous 2 months?
Sure. So we started receiving in July. We did not have the actual monthly amount determined as when July rolled around. So we received it in accounting entry, not in a deposit in a bank account, but it's for accounting entries, a placeholder amount for July and August. Now that we know the actual amount, we trued it up in September to account for that we over accounted on paper in accounting records for July and August, and now we've made that right, and we'll see the exact number starting in October and going forward.
What's the actual amount that you will be receiving each month then?
I'll defer the question to Nicole, the CFO. She's on the call. I'll make sure I don't misstate.
Dr. Smith, I believe the figure is $464,000 approximately.
I didn't understand you.
$464,000.
Okay. On page 22, Mr. Parrish, we have a foreign language there. I don't know if this is Latin or what, but what and why did you report?
Yeah, let's if it's okay, let's hold that. That's the next section of the agenda. So if we could table that, and we'll come to it when we transition from school improvement fund into the path forward.
I'll ease my role. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Representative Smith. Are there other questions for Eric regarding the School Improvement Fund and the update there.
Question?
Yeah, please, Wes.
Mr. Parrish, could you describe briefly what your process or what your internal control is going to be in handling change orders? It's probably too early in the process, but I can imagine a project of this scope and size is going to have some change orders.
Absolutely. That's to be expected on the large projects. On the smaller ones, I don't anticipate that to be significant. Two steps that we've built in. One, the architect engineering firm communicates directly with both GCSC, Buildings and Grounds department head, as well as MGT. That'd be Rob Tanner, who's usually with us today. So before anything even makes it to the drawing board or the design phase, that conversation would take place. And then some understanding around what would need to be required on a change, which, as you know, will probably happen. And so some validation around that. And then what does that mean to the project? There's a give and take. If we have to add to something, something typically would be taken away. And then that's the first level. The second level comes to both myself and Dr. McNulty to approve any change order that has gone through both Buildings and Grounds and through Rob Tanner.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, hearing none, we do have one action item here, which is, as you recall, we set up a process to approve the claims docket on a monthly basis that is presented for you there on pages 16 through 20 in the packet. Are there any questions regarding the claims docket before we move to vote?
Justin?
Yeah, please.
Could I request that we get sent the claims docket in a separate document outside of the bigger picture, just so we have those alone to look at? I mean, that is a separate document, not part of a booklet.
Eric, I assume that's something you guys could provide relatively easily?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make that a habit going forward. All right. Do I have a motion on the claims docket?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the claims docket as presented.
A motion, is there a second? Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Courtney, would you call the roll?
Yes. Paul Joyce?
Yes.
Wes Bennett? Rebecca Kubacki?
Yes.
And Justin McAdam. 4-0.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you very much. Our next item of business, we have an update on the path forward. I believe Ms. Bradley is going to present that to us if she's not having technical difficulties.
Good morning, everybody. I am having a little bit, not as much as before. My video is not working. However, I can hear and see you all pretty well. So if that's okay, I will move forward.
Yes, that's fine, and we can hear you just fine. So
okay, great. Okay, so just an update on the path forward that was presented, I believe, that I talked about at the last meeting. So surveys were conducted in September and this month in October. We wanted to gain some input, community input, on how the data would be best displayed in the dashboard, and two of the templates kind of gained similar support. And so in your packet, there is a template that I don't know the number either, but you should see a template there, and that is a replication of what the dashboard that we'll use for the path forward will look like. And it is a combination of those two templates that kind of floated to the top. So this will be presented in December. And as it relates to our progress toward the data points on the plan, we've organized our curriculum teams. Advisory boards for each school have been formed, and meetings have happened this month. Some still to meet before the end of the month, and we're excited about that. Those advisory boards consists of parents, teachers, administrators, and in some cases, some students. They are looking at data for the school. They're examining different issues that may come up and coming up with solutions collectively in a collaborative way. So we're excited about those school advisory meetings that are happening. Also, our curriculum team has partnered with some outside agencies. We have Starbase. We have a representative from Starbase, which is in Gary, and also the Gary Historical Society, along with our instructional coaches, our curriculum department. That meeting is planned for Monday, and we are going to get together to come up with a project-based learning activity K-12 for the second semester. We are focusing on STEM, Tuskegee Airmen, and other African-American notables so that students are able to do some projects around those topics. We've closed the window for our first formative assessment. We are utilizing iReady as our formative assessment, and that data will be ready in December, and we'll display that on the dashboard. We're excited that students, we were able to test almost about 90% of the students K-8. The high school is using a different, they use a different measure, and they're still working on theirs, but we are done with the K-8 and working on the paths that come from the iReady assessment so that we know exactly where students are, where they need to be in order to help kind of close those gaps. And that is all that I have on the path forward, unless there are questions.
Ms. Bradley, if you could address Representative Smith's question around the foreign language in the document that was provided in the packet. Representative Smith raised a question, and I think there's an example in the packet that you gave us of what the path forward looks like, and it includes what appears to be maybe Latin or...
Right. So that's just the template itself. So it's not filled in or anything. It will be, of course, in English, but this is just to give you an idea of what it will look like the academics piece and how the information will be displayed. So the foreign language there is just to show, I think when you build a template, that's just kind of what it defaults to, but that will not be how it will be displayed in December.
I was having flashbacks to high school Latin class.
No. I'll be in Latin. No.
Are there other questions for Ms. Bradley?
Survey. How widespread was your survey? What numbers of community members or parents did you?
Okay, I believe that it was about 404 respondents. We had quite a few. It was on the website for some time.
The enrollment data, is that separate from Passport?
Yes.
That's a separate report? Yeah, it's next. I see it.
It is next.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, Dr. McNulty has it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apologize, I jumped the gun. I was excited. I already talked about it.
If you have a question about that, please go ahead and ask it.
The years that are shown, where you have FY19, is that 18-19 school year? Okay, so where you have the line drawn, my understanding is that MGT has been here 3 years. They're now in their 4th year. Am I correct or incorrect?
No, that's correct. So the 17 we had MGT began in August of 17, and so there was no time to mount an enrollment campaign or do any focus on enrollment, starting the work in August.
This chart is off because actually the line should be drawn a year ahead of that, even though you got a rationale and maybe you want to put a bullet as to why. But I think this shows inaccurate information.
When they understood.
I can't hear you.
Understood.
Okay. And I guess the budget information is separate as well. Right?
Yes, we'll touch on the budget next.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there other questions for Ms. Bradley? All right. Well, Ms. Bradley, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you.
Up next, we do have the Gary Community School Corporation 2021 budget. We have with us Nicole Wolverton, who is the new CFO for Gary Community Schools. And I believe, Nicole, this is your first opportunity to join us. And so before you jump into the budget, if you take a little bit of time just to introduce yourself and say hello.
Good morning, everybody. Previously, the last 5 years have spent time with Center & Company, which was a municipal advisory firm located in Maryville. I had the opportunity to kind of consult with different units of government, with my primary focus being school corporations. Specifically, I consulted with the City of Gary and Gary Sanitary District, as well as Gary Schools since last fall, which allowed me the opportunity to get very familiar with the financial status of the city and some of the challenges that community faces. I'm very excited to be a part of Gary Schools' team, and it's been a relatively smooth transition so far, and I'm really looking forward to the future, and I think we've got a good, strong path ahead of us.
Thank you. Well, if you want to jump into the budget presentation, I know you put a lot of documents together for us. Please take it away.
Sure, absolutely. I just want to start kind of by saying I think this year's budget really has been a challenge for every unit of government, especially school corporations. I don't think anyone anticipated that we would be in the middle of a pandemic and what that would really look like for all of us. It's been very difficult to kind of predict what's happening, tomorrow to the next few months to really what a year from now would look like financially. So this tool, this budget is a tool for us to really build based on estimates and assumptions, trends, for which all things are going to be fluid in nature for us. But it's something that we can, have a good starting point for what we're going to be like next year. The budget presented today is the DLGS required budget for our property tax funds and the education fund. The overall budget comparison page, I'll just kind of dive right into it. The comparison years, looking back for 2019 to 2021, there's definitely been some major changes. So I wanted to highlight those. Specifically, our 2021 estimated circuit breaker credit this year has increased by $2 million from last year. Lake County was one of the last counties, unfortunately, to kind of feel that full effect of the increased circuit breaker. And I think this year we're definitely feeling that full effect. So what that really means for us is that our property tax revenue that we'll be collecting will be reduced as from prior years. On a positive side, though, we were able to greatly reduce our operations fund budget. With the 1065 school improvement funds, we were able to take out a lot of those big ticket capital expenditure outlays out of operations, and now they'll be funded with that new revenue stream.
The increased circuit breaker, how much is that worth a year for the Gary Schools?
So the increased circuit breaker was $2 million. Overall, the state of Indiana had a growth quotient of 4.2, so all of our levies are maxed out at the 4.2% growth quotient, but it does look like a $2 million increase. Now, with that being said, I think historically the city of Gary has collected about 75% of their property taxes, so we have to take that into consideration as well.
So is it fair to say then that you would expect a $1.5 million budget hit? Is that a rough ballpark?
Yes, that is fair to say.
Okay. All right. And I'm gonna. This may be more of an Eric question than a you question, but I think that's part of the calculus that you guys have taken into account in calculating the amount for the referendum and the need there, and you've factored that into your long-term projections around what that deficit looks like. Is that accurate?
If we saw this coming, the day coming that we would take this hit, and it's not a one-time, one-year hit, it's a going forward hit. And so that was definitely a big part of the referendum and what went into the referendum calculations.
Thank you.
So on our next page is the Form 3 that was advertised. This was actually submitted on Gateway as of September 22nd. And we did hold our first public hearing on Friday, October 9th at Westside. It was also streamed live on Facebook. This Form 3 and the Form 1, along with the detailed appropriation expenses, were also posted on September 22nd on the school's website under the Business Services page as well. So this is just basically a summary of the budget.
What kind of attendance did you guys have, or participation in that hearing? Did many people turn out?
So we did not have anyone in attendance at the public hearing, and I don't believe there were any comments on Facebook as well. At the start of the hearing, we did say if any comments were received on Facebook, we would address those as well, and I don't believe we had any.
Mrs.
You can monitor the number of people watching and a handful of people that did tune in.
Hear you very well there, but could you just summarize that real quick?
Yep. At the public hearing streamed through Facebook, there were no questions that came through Facebook, but there were viewers who tuned in to watch the stream.
Thank you. Representative Smith, go ahead with your question.
Did you want me to wait till she finishes completely, or as you ask questions, am I allowed to ask questions?
I think if you have something that's go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, on that page there, you have mentioned the collection rate and the budget hit. I didn't quite understand. Have you adjusted this budget based on our collection rate, or is this are you using what we should, based on the levy we should generate?
So part of the budget process is essentially we're always going to ask for more. We're going to plan for the most maximum levies. We're going to make sure we max those out. We're including as much miscellaneous revenue as possible and kind of our best guesses to make sure that we're not leaving any money on the table. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, Dr. Smith, but hopefully that's a
chart.
Estimate.
You have the estimated school max levy, and then you have the property tax credit estimate based on the caps. My question is that figure going to be even lower with the collection rate? That's what I'm asking.
So essentially, yes, the net revenue that we will receive could fluctuate depending on the collection rate. So if this year, for example, if Gary collects 90%, we will collect a little bit more than anticipated, but we do factor in that basic historical collection percentage. And those numbers, actually, the tax cap credit, as well as our maximum levy, are given to us by the DLGF to use in our budget templates.
Okay. I've been working with the referendum committee, and we've talked about a $71 million figure for the 8 years. That's based on this $8,900,000 figure. But you have in column 3 a $12 million figure. Can you explain how those two are correlated? Because my understanding, as we've been talking on the radio shows, was that the amount collected may be lower than the $8.9 million. Can you explain that to me?
Sure, absolutely. So this maximum levy for the referendum specifically is calculated by the net assessed values and the tax rate. So we're essentially, in our budget, we want to max out that levy. So that $12 million figure is the highest amount calculated by the net assessed value and the tax rate. Now, will we receive the $12 million? No, because of the property tax collection estimate as well. So if you take about 75% of that $12 million, it puts you at about $8 million, almost $9 million. So that's what we budgeted for in terms of appropriations to spend, and in hopes that we'll receive that, if not maybe more, depending on tax collection.
you're putting this into the budget. What if the referendum doesn't pass? This is a large amount that you've got as a part of this $82 million.
That's a great question. If the referendum doesn't pass, because this is a requirement for the DLGF that we budget for these appropriation dollars. So if it does not pass, that line item will no longer exist. So it is a separate fund because it's an operating referendum. So will have no effect on any other funds, including operations, education, debt service, that type of thing. This is in addition to that. So our $82 million will, in totality, will then decrease to $73 million.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wolfson, if you want to keep going, please do.
Sure, absolutely. So the next page is a Form 4B summary. And in my opinion, this is probably the most important part of the budget process. I think this form really illustrates that you're not only looking at, next year's budget, but you're really accounting for an 18-month span. So we're calculating or estimating what our ending year balance will be for this year, as well as for the next 12 months. I'm sorry. So as part of the DLGF process, we are required, as I kind of mentioned before, to include the referendum. As stated, that can also be removed as well. But if you'll look at the operations line specifically, you'll notice that the estimated balance for the year ending 2021 is still at a deficit. So it's very important, I think, to stress, and I can't stress this enough, how important it is to have that referendum funds in order to, for the operations fund to be self-sufficient. We are looking at the DLGF continuing to cut the operations fund because of that negative balance by $10 million, leaving us with a small but I think manageable appropriation within that fund for 2021. Without the referendum, I think we'll have a different conversation. It'll be a tough conversation that will include, what kind of cuts and kind of the future of Gary schools without that additional revenue source. But you'll see in the other funds, the education and debt service, they are ending the year for 2021 healthy with a positive cash balance. I would like to also kind of share another concern, I think, for everyone, all CFOs across the school district, is that we have to plan for a 5 to 15% reduction in our education fund based on our basic grant revenue. And I think we don't really know what that looks like yet. For us, a 5% cut would be almost $2 million. A 15% cut would be $6 million. I think that's something that we have to keep in the back of our mind as we are budgeting as well. With that being said, education currently is healthy at the moment as a fund, but we don't know what those cuts look like.
What drives those cuts? Is that expectations of what the General Assembly will do with appropriations in the next biennium?
I think so. I mean, this is, from the Department of Education, just kind of, we haven't gotten a lot of information about it. I think it's forecasting our counts, ADM, basic grant tuition for our students, that kind of thing. It's really hard to put a number to, what that may look like.
I hear you. Okay. Well, thank you. Representative Smith, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm trying to understand this Form 4B. When I looked at this Form 4B, we've said that we had a deficit operating funds, and you've got that figure there. But you put here that you got property tax to be collected plus miscellaneous revenue, which changes that to a $2 million deficit. What is our deficit for the year?
That's a great question. Our deficit for the end of the year in total is going to be around the $6 million figure. This fund specifically, you're right, is based on our December settlement of property taxes that we'll receive, which we're estimating to be about $2.5 million, and then any miscellaneous revenue as well. So that fund currently is at a deficit. And with those additional items, we'll end about $1 million, almost $2 million within that fund. So in totality, though, we will be the $6 million. And that is all funds across the board.
Okay. I'm looking at 2021. You're showing a deficit of $10 million. My understanding was this referendum was going to get us out of debt, not out of debt, but get us to a balanced budget. But you're showing a deficit of $10 million.
So each fund is viewed separately. This operations fund is our current operations fund, and the referendum money will be into a separate fund, a referendum operating fund. So although those dollars will be used to support the operations fund, which will reduce its deficit, they have to be shown separately. So currently, without considering the referendum funds, that is what our year-end operations account would be estimated at for 2021, which is a $10 million deficit, which I think just really goes to show how much we need that additional revenue source.
My question is not showing you how ignorant I am of this process, but if it is, so be it. I'm looking at $3 million, $3.6 million from the referendum, and we got this $10 million. When do we get to a balanced budget?
I think it takes time. To answer your question, we have a high deficit as it is right now in operations, and I think this referendum is the quickest way to get back to local control and slowly get out of that. I mean, even with the commitments that we've made with the referendum money, being the first $1 million going to teacher raises, the remaining funds will slowly help diminish that deficit.
Okay, are we telling the public the truth? I do not lie to my constituents, and I'm a part of this referendum committee. My understanding and what I've been saying, based on the information that was given to me, was that if we get this referendum passed and it generates the close to $9 million a year, that we would have 2 years where we will be at a balanced budget, and with the possibility of the school corporation being returned to local control. Now what I'm hearing you say is not the same message.
No, I don't think that's correct. I definitely think the referendum is what is going to get us to have a balanced budget. Without those funds, we would not have a balanced budget in the operations account. This is an estimate based on other figures, and
I don't see that 1 year being balanced. You 2021, I don't see it being balanced.
I think
what I'm reading here is if you take the net, and Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I take the net of the operations fund, the education fund, and I really need to be adding. You're not necessarily planning from a budgetary standpoint. When you say the deficit is $6 million, you're not looking at the operations fund only.
Correct.
You're looking across your funds, and you're saying, hey, what's our net position expected to be? Recognizing that you'll have to move money between those funds, even though that's not necessarily the preferred way to do it. It is allowed. And the referendum fund, then the $8.9 million goes to make up the majority of that deficit, but actually some of that other deficit is going to be made up by your education fund as well. Is that accurate?
That is correct. I apologize if I'm not explaining that.
And so in 2021, you'll actually be several million to the good once you account, if the referendum were to pass.
Correct.
Is that accurate? Okay.
I appreciate that information, because I certainly do not want to ever lie to my constituents.
Yeah. And so it's accurate to say that the operations fund will not be balanced by itself, but because we have an excess of funds in the other funds, it's prudent then really to take a smaller referendum to offset that need.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so then lastly, the packet is the capital improvement plan. This is another DLGF requirement. Even though we have removed a lot of the bigger ticket capital items out of our operations budget, we are going to pay for those from the 1065 funds. So that's a new revenue stream for us for that. But I wanted to make sure that we included this as part of the budget process this year.
Great, thank you. And is that 1065 fund, is that a fund that also has to be budgeted and approved by the DLGF?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right, are there other questions for Ms. Wolverton?
Yes, I think it'd be good to explain, maybe Ms. Wolverton explain the process of when the referendum passes, when it gets put on a tax bill, when do we bill the taxpayers, how you collect the money. So when will you see the first dollar from a referendum? I think is important because otherwise, I mean, that has to do with how deficits work is up and down. And until you get that dollar amount in that fund, you're not going to see that deficit starting to come down. So I think maybe go over that process of how Indiana tax bills are collected.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's a great question. So we will not actually see those dollars until our June settlement of 2021. That will be the first time we receive any referendum money. So your tax bills go out in the beginning of the year based on your assessed valuation. So that June settlement is the first time we will receive those funds, which does make it challenging. You know, kind of going back, you're essentially budgeting for almost a year without any sort of additional referendum money. So you have to, continue to control expenditures and monitor your cash flow and those type of items until you receive those referendum dollars.
And then come June 1st, you won't receive the full $8.9 million. You'd receive about half of that.
Yes. So there's a June settlement and a December tax settlement. So it's biannual.
Yeah. Other questions for Nicole? All right. Well, Nicole, thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation and the materials you provided here today. We do have an action item. We do need to approve this budget for the grade to be able to move forward with the process. So with that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we authorize Gary Community School Corporation to adopt the 2021 budget, levy, and tax rate as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. Hearing none. Courtney, would you call the roll?
Paul Joyce? Wes Bennett?
Yes.
And Justin McAdams. Rebecca Kubacki had to jump off.
Yes, thank you.
3-0.
All right, thank you. The motion carries. We do have, I know we have one item of new business. Mr. Parrish, you had a follow-up item on enrollment, I believe, that you wanted to provide.
Quickly, in your packet, we put a one-pager on enrollment, and that's exactly the perfect transition. I just want to draw all the listeners' attention to, we use the word enrollment in conversation, and we know what that means. It's attendance in school and kids that have been registered in Gary Community Schools. Technically, what we're reporting and talking about today is ADM, Average Daily Membership. And that's an Indiana Department of Education term. That is different than enrollment. So ADM is used for state funding when we calculate the tuition reimbursement. That is based on ADM, and that's what we're reporting today. Enrollment is used for federal reporting purposes and the Every Student Succeeds Act reporting purposes. We use those terms interchangeably, but really I want to differentiate between the two. Quickly, the differences between the two: ADM does not include pre-K. It's just kindergarten through 12, where enrollment does include pre-K. And over the years, Gary Community Schools has had several hundred pre-K students. So any given year, if you look at ADM and enrollment, based on that alone, enrollment would be higher because it includes pre-K, ADM is not. And then second, looking backwards, enrollment included the count of Roosevelt students where ADM does not, and that goes to state funding. The state funding for tuition reimbursement went directly to Edison for Roosevelt and peeled that off away from Gary. So it's not a clean comparison. We use those terms interchangeably, and they really are different. I just want to draw people's attention to that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Eric. Any other new business to come before the board today? All right, well, hearing none, thank you all for joining us, and we will adjourn. And Courtney has just a quick note that she makes every time.
Yep, absolutely. As you log off of this meeting today, just be aware that a survey will pop up. That survey is for WebEx. That does not come to DUAB. So if you do have feedback for us, I would just ask you to send us an email at duab@duab.in.gov. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Stay well.
See ya.
Thank you.